of her key allies, Conservative MP and Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, who joins me from the LBC studio in Birmingham. Thank you very much indeed for that. Well, the Prime Minister promised that she'd hit the ground running. She certainly hit the ground. When does the running start, Mr. Cleverly? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Look, what Liz said, what the Prime Minister said when she was running for the leadership, is that we needed to go for growth, we needed to cut taxes, we needed to unlock the energy of all parts of the UK. And what she's done, notwithstanding the small period of time that we took to mourn her late majesty, is she's done in government exactly what she said she would do when she was running for the leadership, and that's to go for growth. That's what this government has been about. That's what the Chancellor's statement's going to be about, and I have no doubt that's what she's going to be talking about in her speech later on today.
When can we see that growth, Foreign Secretary?
Well, look, we've got to make sure that we get that growth moving quickly. That's why she has started the process straight away. That's why she's announced the tax cut, the 20p down to 20p down to 19p, which is a tax cut for 30 million working people. People will start seeing that soon. The investment into infrastructure, as I say, which will unlock the economic growth, and there'll be announcements about that coming through much more quickly than has been the case in the past, because we want to get that growth going as soon as we can, and that's why we started working on it as soon as we could.
Can we just explore some of the issues in Birmingham this week, Mr. Cleverly? Why would it appear your party is currently so riven?
Well, the party conference is about having a debate. That is why we have fringe meetings, and that's why we come together once a year to kick ideas around, to have debate, to have discussion. And you know, we know that not everyone will always agree with everything, but ultimately what we have is a Prime Minister who's very, very clear on the direction of travel that we need to take, and that is a unapologetically pro-growth agenda. And ultimately, when decisions are made across government, we are bound by collective responsibility. And so, my instinct is when you have ideas to feed in and you're lucky enough to be a minister, of course, most of our members are not ministers, but I am, and others
but even
are.
Some ministers seem to be off message, Mr. Cleverly.
Well, look, as you know, some of that debate is inevitably going to generate understandable interest. That's why we have the debate. But ultimately, all ministers are going to be bound by collective responsibility. I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy, Nick. You know me well. I've been on the programme with you a number of times. I feed my ideas in directly to the Prime Minister because I'm in a privileged position to do so.
But have you ever known a time when the Conservative Party seems to be so much at war with itself?
Look, we are not robots. This is not the kind of party where dissent is debate is stifled. What we do is we discuss things, we talk about things, but ultimately when we make decisions, as I say, particularly as ministers, we are bound by collective responsibility, and we work as a team to deliver for the British people.
Your feature in the Times newspaper today, Mr. Cleverly, not just taking aim with that extraordinary missile launcher, but also saying that the Foreign Office will face budget cuts. What sort of level? Where might you be looking?
Look, I don't know. But the point is we have got to recognise that all government departments have got to be focused and careful in their expenditure. We've got to be good custodians of public money. The point I made in the speech I gave yesterday afternoon is that diplomacy, development, international relations really matter. It's how we build alliances around the world, how we deliver a better planet, and also how we protect people here in the UK. But we've also got to recognise that we have recently had the highest tax burden pretty much since the war, that we have a duty in government to spend money as efficiently as possible, because it's not our money. That's the point, it's not our money. The money belongs to the British taxpayer they collectively work incredibly hard to fund the activities of government, and we have a duty to use their money on their behalf as carefully as possible.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that if we can, Mr. Cleverly. There is a nervousness among my listeners who are in receipt of some form of benefits that we can't seem to get an idea of exactly what's going to happen, whether there will be a rise in line with inflation. I had the privilege of interviewing both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. Neither was able to shed any light on it. Can you reassure my listeners in some way, shape or form, Foreign Secretary?
Well, look, it's not about not shedding light on it. There is a process, and we look at the inflation figures, we look at the budgets, we make decisions later on this year. And actually, I'm going to take the opportunity with you to clarify something that I misspoke earlier on. We make the decisions later on in this year for implementation early part of next year, in the spring of next year. And that is how this process works. So the PM, the Chancellor, they will look at the whole financial envelope, they will look at the needs, they will look at what is available, they'll make the decision, they'll make the announcement, and that'll be implemented next year. That is the normal course of events. And doing that doing your thinking out loud here at Party Conference is not the professional or the right way to do that.
So my listeners will know where they are at some point later this calendar year. Is that what I'm hearing? There will be an announcement from one of the relevant departments.
Yes, of course, and that is the timescale that these things are always done to, and I know I quite understand in a period of uncertainty your listeners will want to get as much clarity as early as possible. I totally get that. We all do. But we have to do these things properly, and as I say, the Chancellor made some announcements because there are certain things that we needed to get started immediately. But most of the financial decisions, most of the budget decisions that we would normally expect will be done in the normal way, and that is we're thinking about it, we're crunching the numbers now, announcements later on in the year for implementation in April of next year in the normal way.
The Home Secretary said yesterday that the benefits street culture is still alive and well. Do you concur?
Well, look, we've got a situation now where there are a surplus of job vacancies. We have record low levels of unemployment. That should naturally see that benefit bill coming down because people should be moving into work, and those people in work should be moving into higher paid work. That's what we would normally and naturally want to see. And if that benefit bill isn't coming down in that way, we need to look at why that is, what we need to do different, how we unlock people. If there are people trapped in benefits because there are what we call supply side reforms, if there are things like childcare issues or transport issues which are preventing them taking the advantage of what is actually fundamentally a really strong economy, we need to look at that. And that's what we're going to do. That's what the Prime Minister has committed to, because we want to unlock the potential of every part of the UK and every person in the UK.
Can I ask you to expand on a comment you made yesterday that France is more of a sibling rival than a friend? What? I hear you chuckling, Foreign Secretary. What did you mean by that, Mr. Cleverly?
No, look, we have both nation to nation and person to person and government to government a friendly and good working relationship with France. I had a lovely opportunity at Her Majesty's on the evening before Her Majesty's funeral to chat with President Macron and his wife Susie. My wife and I had a chance to chat with them. He is charming beyond belief. He's clever. He said beautifully crafted words about her late Majesty.
That stood out, absolutely.
Genuinely touching.
So why can't we say they're a friend?
Well, of course they are a friend, but they're also a competitor. And the point I was making, I got two boys, as you know, and they love each other dearly. But my gosh, can they row at times? And you know what? That is not unlike our relationship with the French. We are close. We are good partners. We have come perhaps even closer together in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We work brilliantly well at NATO, at the G7, at the international Quad. But sometimes, of course, we can have blazing rows, and that is, I think, the multi-millennia relationship between our country and France.
Last couple of points.
Sure.
When energy companies themselves say they should be taxed more, this is the boss of Shell, Ben van Woerden, speaking yesterday. I remind you of the comments of Bernard Looney as well, where they say they really can't get out of the way of the money. When the energy companies themselves say they should be taxed more to help struggling households, why won't you and your colleagues review the idea of a windfall tax?
Well, look, if the heads of these big companies want to make decisions on what they do with their money, that's great. And if they want to contribute more, they can. But the point...
Well, how can they contribute more?
So hang on, but the point is...
No, but how do they contribute more?
hang on. Well, this is the point I'm coming to that. So one of the things that I think has been quite distorting in this debate about taxing energy companies is, and I think the Labour Party were doing this on purpose, because if they were doing it by accident, it shows a level of financial incompetence which is quite shocking. They were talking about
I don't think you're in a position to talk about financial competence with your government at the moment. Anyway,
but they were talking about global energy profits, most of which are not in the UK and therefore cannot be taxed by the UK. The tax regime for energy companies in the UK is already quite tight. The system that you've got in place is a strong one. Of course, what we saw a sharp increase in energy prices and therefore the profits of these companies as a result, a kind of a
why
perverse
won't you have
result
a windfall
of this.
tax? They're ready to pay it. Why won't you implement? I know you're the Foreign Secretary, but why don't you pick up the phone to Kwasi and say, come on, let's get that windfall tax?
Because the windfall tax figures that most people are talking about are not taxable because they are not UK figures. We tax the energy companies, hard here in the UK. Not so hard that they break, because no one needs that. But most of the figures that most people have been talking about are global figures, most of which are beyond our.
I think that was just words,
tax.
with respect. I think that's just words. But anyway, thank you. Lastly, your colleague, Mr. Kwarteng, says that the mini-budget didn't really land the way he wanted because of the pressure over the Queen's funeral. Is that the lamest excuse you've ever heard, Mr. Cleverly?
So, understandably and quite rightly, when Her late Majesty passed away, we stopped talking about the usual things that governments talk about, and that is right and that is proper. But of course, what it meant was we weren't able to talk through and explain the full range of things that we did: the investment zones, the investment into transport infrastructure, the cut to the tax paid by 30
Well, I imagine we
million
managed to keep
people.
helping the Ukrainians. That didn't stop during the sad loss of Her Majesty.
No, we didn't
So
stop.
if we managed to do that, why couldn't
hang on. No,
the
the thing is,
budget?
so the thing is, we didn't stop working, but I know there are a load of things that I was going to say and do that I put on hold because, quite rightly, we focused on that period of mourning. What we're saying now is that period of mourning has now finished, and what we're going to do is get back into the usual cycle of making decisions, implementing decisions, and explaining the decisions that we make.
And then having the U-turns. All right, I hope it goes well for you today. Thank you for your time. James Cleverly, Foreign Secretary, appearing here on LBC 2 minutes after 8. Let's get the latest news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. In her first conference